All righty.
Do you
We
see
are
it?
live.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
We are live. Welcome everyone to another Facebook Live with Dr. Nelva Bryant. We're so
Hello.
happy to see you today. And today is a regular day. I don't know if you caught us on this past Monday, but we did have a special Facebook Live with Dr. Nelva Bryant, and we were talking with a groomer as well as a business. Well, she has two businesses, I
Entrepreneur.
guess.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, an entrepreneur, and LaShonda Grefford from the Black Pet Business Network. And it was such a joy having her and going over so many things. But before we move on, Dr. Bryant, please share with everyone who you are and what you do.
Hi there, everyone. I'm Dr. Nelva Bryant. I'm a veterinarian, and I work in the air transportation and the airline industry. There we go. Dealing with transportation of animals, basically. You might wonder, why would a veterinarian be dealing with that? Because actually, if you have animals being transported, you probably need the airlines would need a veterinarian on staff to assist with that process. It is actually very complicated because in the U.S. there's a lot of regulations regarding the transportation of animals, and I say that could be for your pets, your dogs or cats. Could be if you were transporting, say, if there's a zoo animal transportation going domestically, and just being aware of that. And also, again, I said domestically and then internationally. There are regulations for the transportation of your animals, any animal, especially, again, when I say international, and I'm bringing this, putting more emphasis on that, is because my guest today with it, we're going to discuss some of the this past year's pet transportation regulations that changed from CDC, that she had a very strong impact. That impacted her, impacted the airlines and everything. So I think it's really important. But again, let me step back a quick second. Yes, I work in the airline industry. I work with Delta Airlines. I've been on staff with them since 2018, brought on to help review and revise the policies for animal transportation. I wish it was a role. I'm hoping that the role that I have will eventually expand out and other airlines see also the significance of having veterinarians with a particular skill set now, not just any veterinarian, but a skill set that is going to help with animal regulations and policies. That's going to be important for all airlines to have for our future. So let's see. These past few years, I developed When Pets Fly. It was my platform to share pet-centric travel education because of the fact that I noticed that many of the pet owners were not really preparing their pets for air travel. Dr. Google, as I always say, did not tell you how to actually prepare. They might tell you logistically, you need a certain document, you need a crate, but you need more information to really be prepared and really focus on your pet during transportation. So that's why I developed When Pets Fly. I started that back about almost 5 years ago, added Greta into the loop, and we've been Zooming ever since with the Facebook Lives. And Greta, I'm going to stop here. Please introduce yourself. You're my right hand.
Thank you. My name is Greta Russo, and yes, I do help with the marketing and social media and all that good stuff with Dr. Bryant and When Pets Fly. And it's been such a journey with the expanding of our audience. I love to watch that part as we have been growing. We started off mostly with pet parents, but now we have lots of veterinarians, we have lots of pet transportation specialists, and everyone in between, especially people who have businesses that are a part of this whole ecosystem, from other airlines that watch us to airports and so forth. So it's been a lot of fun. And as we review and grow with all of everything that we're doing, I love to see how our platform is becoming international as well. So we were just talking about how we've got a large footprint in countries such as the Philippines and England, and all these companies
India.
around
Yep,
India.
India. Amazing.
So it's, being having a love of pets is universal, and it's international. So, what we're doing and what we're saying is getting to everyone around the world. And so with that, not only are we bringing people from the United States, but even other countries. So if you got to catch us was it last Friday? We had Varun from KLB Pets India. That was a very enlightening conversation. And if you missed it, please go back and watch it. So, but I'm very excited for our guests today.
Oh, yeah. These past few years, I have met some amazing people from my role within Delta through participating in various meetings and conferences. And I've just met a lot of really interesting people that, again, always say stakeholders in the animal transportation industry. Our next guest that we're going to have, she's been here before. Actually, she's been here quite a few times, but I love her. I love what she does. I love the business that she has. We have Beth, and I'm sorry, Beth, I always mess up your last name, so I'm just going to say Beth, and you can say it when you come on. But Beth is the CEO of the ARK at JFK. It is the only animal facility on airport grounds in the U.S., and, we need to do something about that. She has a significant role in what she does for pets being transported and other animals, too. And she helps with the pet owners. She also helps within the airline industry as far as the airlines and taking care of animals during transport. She does a lot. And it's because of the fact she's on airport grounds, she has a strategic point to help so many people during that whole process, which could be stressful for everybody if you think about it. So having a facility on airport grounds is tremendous. I wish someday, Beth, would be for her to be down here and have something here in Atlanta, because I would love to be a part of it. Would be the ultimate goal, to be honest with you. But I'm excited to have her back again with us today. Is there anything else you want to talk about, Greta, before we get started with her and pull her onto the stage?
Well, I just want to brag about Beth and the ARK at JFK just for a second, because number one, everybody that is flying internationally, you and I always tell them, oh, you got to go through the ARK. So that, we're always recommending them to everyone. But I think I had my greatest source of pride for them when they were chosen as the facility to handle all the prize-winning horses for the Olympics. I mean, if that's not a stamp of approval, then I don't know what is. But
that's awesome.
I agree with you that all of the major airports definitely need to have an ARK. So we have to clone Beth and put her at all airports. And, and we'll just put that out in the universe and see if we can get that to happen. But I'm looking forward to bringing her on so that she can help give some tips on traveling international. And I'm pretty sure they help with animals in the local. Well, I say America is local, but I'm sure she does that too. But I'm looking forward to having the conversation with her.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So let's see. Oh, we do have to mention this real quick. You are going to be a speaker this weekend at Groomed.
Yes.
So all the groomers, if you're watching, make sure and if you're in Atlanta or can get over to Atlanta this weekend, Groomed is happening today through Sunday, and Dr. Bryant is going to be speaking on Sunday twice. So her first seminar starts at 10 a.m. and the second one starts at 12:30. So again, if you can, please come out to Groomed this Sunday to come meet with Dr. Bryant and hear her speak. Her two conversations are going to be on, tell everyone what you're going to be talking about.
Cool. Well, let's see. The first one is going to be more about infectious diseases that they need to be aware of in that for pets, dogs and cats primarily, of course. Just kind of the most common infectious diseases that are vaccine preventable. So they're just going to be aware. It'll explain, also go into detail as far as the diseases, how they're transmitted, and why it's important for our pets coming into that environment are actually vaccinated. So just sharing that with them. And then the second one, groomers see skin lesions on pets, and it's important. Sometimes they might actually, pets go to groomers, certain breeds of pets go to groomers more than they see their veterinarian on a yearly basis. So the groomers need to be aware of common skin conditions in pets, and then also have a relationship with a local veterinarian to share that information with. So we're kind of twofold. I'm going to show them some common skin conditions in pets, what to look for, not for them to diagnose anything, but just to say, hey, that's abnormal, so they can share that information with the pet owner. And then ultimately, they can all work together with a veterinarian. And as I described it, as giving collaborative care to a pet and everything. So we all need to work together for pet care. It's not just say only veterinarians. Groomers have a strong part of it because, again, they see some pets more frequently than they see, pets will see them more than they will see their veterinarian. So it's important that they're aware of these conditions and then also develop a relationship with their veterinarians locally.
Absolutely. Well, let's bring Miss Beth in and get this thing started. I can't wait to talk to her. Let's see. Hi, Beth.
Hi, Beth.
Hey.
Well, before we get our conversation started, I am going to read an introduction real quick to everyone so that they'll know who you are, and then we will go right into things. So give me one moment. So Elizabeth Schueth, everyone calls Beth, is president and CEO of the ARK, Import-Export Center, LLC, oversees daily operations, strategic and financial planning, and marketing for JFK International Airport's Animal Health Reception and Quarantine Center, the ARK at JFK. Opened in January 2017, the ARK provides necessary, safe, and humane animal care services to airlines and their ground handling agents, shippers and brokers, corporate accounts, rescue organizations, and individuals for the import and export of all animals arriving or departing from JFK, including horses, goats, pets, zoo animals, exotics, and laboratory animals. ARK's facility comprises 63 equine quarantine stalls and 25 equine export stalls. ARK's Pet Oasis offers kenneling, a CDC-approved animal care facility and quarantine, ground transport, veterinarian and husbandry services for in-transit pets and other small animals. Elizabeth is an active contributor to animal shipping trade organizations, including the International Pet and Animal Transportation Association, IPATA, and Animal Transportation Association, ATA, as well as various organizations concerned with public health and animal care. She serves on the board of directors of IATA and the SPCA International, a rescue group that provides U.S. military personnel with financial and logistical support to move their pets. Everyone, if you could please help me welcome Beth Schueth. Didn't have the slot machine when you were here last time.
Howard, thank you for being here. I'm very happy you're back, Beth.
Thank you for having me, Nelva, and I truly appreciate all the efforts that you're putting into this podcast to educate the public on how complicated and necessary animal transportation is, and how necessary the care and husbandry that goes into it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I love it. And this is, I think, Beth, we've had you at least 3 times, I think.
Maybe, yeah.
Obviously, we really can't touch you. We
can't
love
get
what
rid
you
of me.
do.
You can't get rid of me.
No, never. Don't want to. I think it's awesome what you're doing. Honestly, to have an animal facility on airport grounds in the U.S. is extremely vital. You services you provide are amazing. And Greta mentioning earlier, saying that you're like an approved location for the Olympic horses coming in. That's
well, not. Yeah, we did work with a number of the horse shippers that that brought their horses, sent them to the Olympics and then brought them back. So
Mhm.
we do see, I mean, obviously these are high level competition horses,
Yeah,
and they travel all over the world. They probably fly more than we do.
right. But that's
So
amazing.
yeah,
That
so they came through here, and we were happy to assist with their care.
Yeah, and I
Oh,
don't think
that's
I was telling Greta earlier. Your facility is outstanding. It's been probably at least 3 years since I had my visit, but I'm sorry, that place was. I was so excited to finally come and be able to have a tour of the facility, and it was outstanding. It's beautiful, just amazing. So I
Thank you.
look. I know you're not say open to the public. Come view my spot. Might not be that way, but for those that you will allow to go tour the facility, you'll be very happy you did. You'll be very happy.
Well, at the very least, they need to utilize the ARK so that they can ship their animals to wherever.
Right.
Well, we have a lot to cover, but I love that we're going to talk with you and learn more in depth about the CDC and their regulations. So, if we can jump into it, how have the new CDC regulations affected the ARK?
Well, yeah, that's a big one. So I don't know if Nelva, you've talked about this, Dr. Bryant, you've talked about this online, but effective August 1st of
Mhm.
2024, there was a significant change in the way CDC was evaluating animals, or primarily dogs, arriving from foreign countries, particularly countries that the CDC considered at a high risk for rabies. So CDC, as well as, it's not just the United States, it's not just CDC, but virtually every other country in the world is highly concerned about the transmission of rabies. And it creates a major impact on the individual, on a family, on the public at large, because the exposure can happen very easily to
Mhm.
to an animal, or in particular a dog that may have rabies. So the biggest change that the regulations changed somewhat as it relates to the requirements, but those were largely in place before. So the main requirements, the dog has to be at least 6 months of age. That was a change. It was 4 months before. The dog has to be microchipped. The dog has to be vaccinated at the earliest at 12 weeks, and then revaccinated. And then for dogs coming, if they're a foreign vaccinated dog, coming from a high risk country, they have to have a titer to prove that the dog doesn't have, has antibodies toward the rabies vaccine, and it has to be inspected at an approved animal care facility. So right as of now, there are 6 ports coming into the United States that have animal care facilities, and those are New York, Philadelphia, Washington D.C., um, Miami, Atlanta. Did I say Atlanta?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
and Los Angeles. And Los Angeles has 2 animal care facilities. At the other ports, it's only a single facility. So if you think about the number of dogs that are traveling, I think we've estimated, you know, CDC estimated about 1 million dogs a year. It's maybe more than that because there's really no way of tracking it. Uh, so the the biggest change was requiring those animals to come to an animal care facility, regardless of the mode of transportation. And previously, the focus was entirely on cargo dogs, so dogs that are traveling with an airway bill in the cargo hold of an aircraft. What this did was really refocus the initiative to all the dogs that are traveling in cabin internationally, from high risk rabies and countries, and then dogs that are also checked as excess baggage, because those are considered basically your personal property, not cargo, not the responsibility of the airline. They're a passenger's responsibility.
Yeah.
Uh,
I'm
so
gonna say, hold on. I'm gonna stop
yeah,
because you
go ahead.
saying a lot just to slow down so that just any questions you have, Greta, before you go? I'm following you, but I want to slow down a little bit just in case there's some other folks. Because look, you're
For us
already
regular people.
I realize other folks that might not and everything. Did you have any questions before we get going, Greta? Because or anything? Because this really, the regulations were really kind of it changed things for the U.S. because yes, it was at a point where if you were traveling somewhere, coming back to the U.S. And I'm telling you based upon the history and my knowledge, before getting my role with Delta, I was actually with CDC and I had the role of the dog importation SME. So I was very familiar with the regulatory requirements coming to the country, and they were very, very minimal. I mean, extremely minimal. You needed and I don't know if you remember way back, Beth, it was a confinement agreement where it was just a little letter. It was before they switched it to the import permit and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. So I was involved there, and it was kind of like you just get this letter saying that you would quarantine the dog for a certain period of time or make sure it's vaccinated. But the changes in there are needed because there were some outbreaks of dogs coming to the country that actually broke with rabies after entering the U.S. So all of these changes were extremely important and were very much needed. But I'll admit, my personal thought is it went from one extreme to the other, where a lot of things that are needed and everything. But Greta, did you have any questions as our resident pet owner in reference to some of the things you were saying there? Clarification.
So and I'm asking from a pet parent viewpoint. So if a pet parent is traveling in and out the country and we need to go, number one, I guess the first question is, do we need to go through these ports that have the CDC centers? And the second one is we would need to choose 6, which is New York, Philadelphia, and I wasn't sure if that was Washington, D.C. or Washington State.
Washington, D.C.,
and then,
yes.
Okay, and Miami, Atlanta, or Los Angeles. So I guess, did my question come out clear? Two questions.
So if your dog is a foreign vaccinated dog from a high-risk rabies country, and I think there's 50 or 80 or something like that, high-risk countries, you must come through one of those ports. If your dog is a U.S. vaccinated dog and you have a valid, either a valid export certificate issued by the U.S. Department of Agriculture showing the dog's vaccination history, or you have completed other requirements, you don't need to go through one of those ports. If your dog is arriving from a low risk country or a no risk country, you do not have to go through the ports. However, everyone traveling with a dog is expected to fill out the dog importation form, and also the dogs have to be 6 months of age now. And that was one of the major changes with this new regulation, which affected a lot of breeders. It also affected Canada, something that I didn't think about because I'm primarily in the aviation transport world, but a lot of people, particularly in Western Canada, take their dogs from Canada to the United States to a veterinarian because there's not a local veterinarian available. And so now those people are unable to transport their dog from Canada to the US, or, even someone coming from Alaska can't go through Canada. So because of the 6 months of age issue. Other dogs are fine to go through Canada, but it's really the 6 months of age. The other thing is, as I'm sure you've had breeders on your show, a lot of people don't want to purchase a puppy that's 6 months of age because of the socialization and training that is really in bonding with the owner or the trainer or the handler that's using the dog. So that's posed a big that's created a big impact on the animal travel world.
Definitely. Read about, look, I think my niece, well, Pak, I have my niece's dog. His name is Pak. He came from Hungary as a puppy. And this was a couple of years ago, but the ability to get an international puppy now, something, that's impaired because they have to be at least 6 months of age. And as you said, Beth, everybody wants a puppy. They don't want it a little bit older. They feel that the bonding period for them is early, and that's why they want it. But reality is, you can bond the puppy or any dog at any point in time. I mean, it's the ability is there, but everyone is still on the mindset: get them young, and do that. So that interferes with that process. Their regulations impacted a lot of industries. That's all I can say. It definitely did in reference to that.
So the other thing is that I believe one of the impetus behind this regulation was that CDC really was unable to track how many dogs were actually traveling, how many dogs were coming into the country, because there were such a large number coming through the passenger environment. So if you think about flights from the Caribbean or flights from South America into the US or Asia, those were people had their pet, and a lot of them are small pets, just in a little carrying case, put underneath the seat in front of them. Some are service dogs, but there were a lot of dogs coming in, and they weren't tracked at all. And in many cases, customs that actually enforces the CDC regulations, they didn't even they couldn't stop them. They didn't know, because someone's carrying a little duffel bag. You don't necessarily expect a dog to be inside of that. So that was a big piece, is to incorporate the passenger environment animals into this regulation. However, again, kind of the law of unintended consequences, really no one was set up for that. And Dr. Bryant, you can explain the difference between above the wing and below the wing in all of the different airline carriers, that they. It's like having two separate companies. It might be all Delta Airlines, but it's very different.
It's very different. There's a lot of folks who don't realize, again, how a pet is transported, or animals transported. And I'm focusing on pets. It's going to vary in the airline. The airline can do it in cabin, and that's going to be your pets that can fit in a soft-sided carrier underneath the seat, or your service dogs. And then there's cargo. These are two separate divisions within the airline. And as you know, I mean, Delta, yes, we have in cabin, and they can go by cargo potentially. You've got other airlines such as Southwest that doesn't have cargo, but your pets can fly in cabin. So there's airlines that have these different variations, and some of the people need to realize that. And then also with the regulations that CDC, how they enacted it, their regulations is almost trying to change how airlines do business, because we didn't go into detail about, but in a way they're changing how airlines do things. And if you want to go further, we can in reference to that. But the regulations change, basically will impact the airline industry and how they do work too. Right. So just be aware of that. So it just had a huge impact on many industries, and as far as how the routine business of airlines are impacted by this regulation. Right.
I think what you're referring to, Dr. Bryant,
I'm trying not to go to
detail. It's the infamous airway bill requirement.
Yes, it's the airway bill. Yes.
And for the uneducated, that any animal traveling in cargo must have an airway bill and be manifested as cargo in and that's a way to track the shipment. It's a way to identify the shipment. It's utilized by a number of different agencies to monitor it. So TSA is looking to make sure there's no dangerous goods, and Customs and Border Protection is making sure there's no illegal goods, and CDC and USDA are looking at infectious diseases and importation of any kind of unwanted.
And that number also, remember, the Department of Transportation, they also require the airlines to provide the numbers, and that's transported by cargo. So they have that all through the airway bill. So it is a way. So the numbers that are out as far as animal being transported is known if they're easily determined if they're transported by cargo. Right. But in cabin, there was no method to really check those numbers or keep track of them. So through an airway bill,
or
that's their method of, through an airway bill was their way of trying to make it now they can do that, but they have to realize, again, the airline is separate. Airway bills are for cargo, manifested cargo. Airway bills are not for in cabin or checked baggage. So now you're asking the airline to change their business model and how they do things. And it's not as simple as you think.
Right.
So,
Exactly.
yeah.
And we'll leave it at that.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
We could be here all day if we start
Yes.
talking about
Thank
that.
you. And look, we haven't gotten past question 1, but yes,
Yeah,
thank
okay.
you. Yeah, but
Well,
it's been complicated, but we're working through it and everything. And the airlines, honestly, there's a lot of them that are adapting to it. There's been airlines that has decided because of the new ruling that they won't allow dogs being transported in cabin coming into the country. So it depends on the airline. It's impacted them and could be positive or negative ways for that traveler, because if they decide to embargo based upon the CDC regulation, that means now that airline decided they're not going to transport pets in dogs in cabin.
Right.
So, yeah.
well, what is involved with being a CDC ACF?
Right. So lots of acronyms here. I think everybody
Yes.
knows what CDC is, but
Yes.
ACF stands for an animal care facility. And as I said, there's 7 now at 6 different ports.
Mhm.
The ARK at JFK was the prototype ACF for CDC, and we worked very closely with not only our local CDC representatives, but and medical officers, but also with CDC headquarters. And they came here a number of times to observe and, talk about biosecurity, talk about optimal facility layouts, and also training of employees and a whole variety of things like that. So we were in a sense grandfathered into becoming an ACF at the very outset of this program, along with a couple other facilities that were also early adopters. And Now, as of January 1st of this year, all of the ACFs have to be recertified by CDC, and that required a 15-page questionnaire that covered everything from our organizational structure to the layout of our facility to our standard operating procedures to how are we protecting our employees? What happens if someone is bit? What's our chain of command in terms of notifying people? And then they also gave us all of their requirements. So things like segregating dogs, making sure that the dogs are not in the same area as other dogs that would be considered healthy or from countries that weren't exposed to rabies. They want to ensure that that the dogs can be that we have adequate space for the largest shipment that we might receive. So at the ARC, we have historically worked with a number of different rescue groups, as you noted in the introduction, that had large shipments of dogs. So we might have had 60 dogs at a time. And even though typically those can be turned around in a single day, if we can get all the veterinarians to examine the dogs and have CDC sign off. But what CDC said is that now you have to be able to ensure that if something happens and that entire shipment has to be quarantined for 28 days, you have to prove that you can accept the largest shipment that you might and be able to quarantine them. So that's a pretty major requirement,
Yeah.
because typically for airport facilities or facilities that provide these kind of services, you're looking at an in and out. It's kind of a more of a hotel kind of model, that you're not really looking at long-term kenneling per se. You're pretty much looking at in transit, and so it's like a day or two, whereas this could be potentially be 28 days. So there's a lot, there's a lot of biosecurity requirements. How do we clean the facility? How is the water once we do that, the waste and water that we use to clean the facility, where does it go? Making sure that all of our employees have the appropriate animal handling skills necessary to work with what could be a fractious or very anxious, nervous dog. How do we protect our employees against rabies, the transmission of rabies to our employees, and what are the notification procedures? So it's a pretty complicated process, and CDC has been very detail oriented on their compliance, and so it's an ongoing process. We work with them daily.
Hey, question for you. Do they require the employees to have rabies prophylaxis?
They did put that as a requirement,
Mhm.
and it's as you can imagine in today's world, it's
Yeah,
a touchy subject.
that's huge.
I would say that a number of surprisingly, we offer it to all of our employees,
Good.
but there's a number that have conscientious objections, so we had to come up with a policy to work with those people that did not want to have the prophylaxis.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. That would be the desired option, obviously, but again, some people don't feel that way.
Mm-hmm.
And for us non-medical people, what's a prophylactic?
Yeah, so
Sorry.
it's yes, preventive
Yeah.
preventive advanced vaccines. So
Yeah.
if you are exposed, then you would not
Yeah.
get the virus
You'd
instead
be
of
amazed.
post-exposure vaccine, which is a lot worse.
You'd be amazed. There's a lot of in the veterinary profession as vet students going in. This was again many moons ago. We all lined up the same day and got our rabies prophylaxis shots. I think it was like once a week or something for a while.
Yeah.
We just everybody got their rabies shot to prevent. Basically, if
Right.
we were exposed, it prevents us from getting all those other major shots. We just get a booster kind of thing, but you'd be amazed in the veterinary profession, the folks that handle the animals the most, like your technicians, they don't have the prophylaxis in their system, which is amazing to think that you're the ones that potentially is going to get bit
Right.
first.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So,
But it's important. That's why I
yes,
just figured
very important.
biosecurity. I was just wondering if
Yep.
CDC mandated it.
Yes. Well, they mandated it, but they also provide for the exceptions.
Right.
Or we have to provide for the exceptions and tell them what our protocols are.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah. So with that, what changes have you made to operations to support the revised CDC importation regulations?
So we were, we were established to work with animals in the cargo environment. We did we did coordinate with the different agencies if there was an issue in the passenger world, but typically all of our interactions occurred ramp side. That means on the air side of the facility where it's secure, and with the cargo facilities. So that means that our vehicles are approved to go to the aircraft directly to pick up animals, or we can go into the cargo facilities to retrieve animals that were shipped as cargo, and then bring them over to our facility. So that process was very established with the airway bills and tracking, and we had to have bonds and screening facilities and things like that for cargo animals. The passenger world, for anybody that's traveled, especially internationally, it's an entirely different environment. You're going to come off an aircraft, and you're shuttled down a isolated corridor that goes directly into the Customs and Border Protection inspection area, and where you show your passport and you answer a bunch of questions. And now one of them is, are you carrying a dog? So that area in the airline international terminals is not readily accessible either from the back, the ramp side, or from the front of the building. And JFK is currently undergoing a major redevelopment program. So you can imagine that there's so much traffic right now and disruption. So for our vehicles to go and pick up an animal from a passenger environment, we have to sit there and have one person stay in the van and circle around while someone else would go in to meet the passenger or pick up dogs. Also, it's not as certain. There's a lot less certainty in the operations because there's thousands of customs officers at JFK, and the training is difficult to get every single person trained to know all the different regulations. So and each customs officer has a certain amount of authority, independent authority, to say, oh, let this person go. So getting that message to the customs agents and the training and working with customs as well as CDC to ensure that all the dogs are being stopped was a major undertaking on our part. So now we've worked closely with the airline terminals here at JFK, the air carriers here at JFK, as well as CDC and customs, and we had to rework the way we get into the facilities, but now we are able to go on the backside and get into the customs inspection area. But it is a lot more complicated, a lot more difficult. You have to go up and down stairs, and so it's not actually optimal to be carrying dogs that are in a crate. That's one aspect of it. We also had to spend a lot of time working with individual airlines to say, hey, you all have to have a protocol and a operating procedure, and you have to know that now what CDC has said is if that dog was imported incorrectly or improperly or doesn't have the reservation that's required, it becomes the airline's responsibility to send the dog back if the dog is rejected or denied entry into the United States. So it put financial repercussions onto the airline as to for not following the regulations. That was kind of the case before, but it wasn't easily enforced. But the new regulations actually have that into the law. So now the airlines are on the hook. So we then had to educate airlines, work with them. We created a memorandum of understanding, and that's just the ARK, not necessarily the other animal care facilities, that lays out what specific services are we providing to the passengers for the airlines, as well as the cargo environment. But this really affected the passenger side. And what services do the airlines want from us? Maybe what they don't want from us, and also what's the payment mechanism, who's accepting responsibility. I mean, typically this is the responsibility of the passenger to make the reservation and to make the payment for the animal care facility services. But in the event that a passenger shows up with a dog that wasn't caught at the arrival at the departure port, then that becomes the responsibility of the airline. So that was another change. We also added on to our facility, both from a segregation perspective and from a size perspective, to ensure that we did have the space to service some of the larger shipments. Many of the current animal care facilities are smaller and really only have the ability to take 2 or 3 dogs at a time, until they can turn it over. So we added on to our facility in order to accommodate these larger CDC shipments.
Yeah, amazing.
Wow.
I would say for the pet owner, what they need to know, and it's more dogs coming into the country.
Yes.
Before you try to return with your dog or come just for the first time in the U.S. with your dog, you must check CDC's dog importation regulations to ensure compliance. What should be happening as far as the airlines, before you even board, you need to show your documentation before boarding that you met the requirements for CDC. And they're looking.
Right.
If you have not met those requirements, you should not be allowed on that flight, because guess what? Once you get to the U.S., especially if a high-risk country, they can say, coming from a high-risk country, they could say, go right on back to that country of origin because you don't meet requirements. The days of, well, hey, they'll be in, we'll just keep them in quarantine in the U.S. That's not that easily done. Say, for instance, you don't have space at the ARK at JFK and we have no alternative. You'll have to go back to your country of origin. So really, what pet dog owners coming to the U.S., returning to the U.S. with your dog, depending on your country of origin, make sure, I'll just say, please make sure you meet those CDC's requirements. And if it's high-risk country, please make sure you've done everything you're supposed to do. And when we say high-risk countries, we're talking about Brazil, we're talking about Dominican Republic, There's a long list. I think there's probably close to 80 to 90 countries, Beth.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So you need to pay attention to all this information prior to coming to the U.S. With a dog, and I always go back to my days of CDC where folks will say, my dog is an American dog.
Yeah.
Prove it. Prove it.
Right.
You know,
exactly.
so now CDC makes you prove it with either some vaccination records or something, microchipping, all these things go online. You've got to prove it. So again, before even getting on the plane, make sure you meet those requirements.
Yeah, if you look at a map of the, okay, go ahead.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, if you look at a map of the world geographically, not necessarily by population, but if you look at a map of the world, the majority of countries are high risk. So, so it is a lot.
Yeah, I can imagine. I wanted to ask, so let's pretend I am a pet parent and I need to travel with my dog. So step one, Dr. Bryant said to check with CDC regulations. But I wanted to ask, your website, does it have like tips in helping people traveling with dogs and what to do and how to prepare? Or do you even have a link to the CDC? What tips, number one, do you have all that on your site? And number two, what tips would you give people traveling with dogs to prepare for all of this?
Uh-oh.
Well,
Is that me or her?
I don't know. I think it's her.
I'm hoping she has, I'm quite sure she has information on her website in reference to it. Give her a second to pop back. But yeah, Greta, really anyone traveling, returning to the U.S. with your dog or coming to the U.S. for the first time with a dog, definitely look on the website, CDC's website. And maybe I don't know if we have it, but we need to put it on our website. Beth, do you have all information and can you share some tips that you have that may be on your website for pet owners trying to prepare for travel to the U.S. with a dog?
Yes, everything is on our website, along with links to both CDC and USDA, and then also, I mean, it's really important that you check with your preferred carrier because, as you noted, several of the carriers have said we're just not going to do this because they had several non-compliances, and it created such a hassle and time, and made a lot of people unhappy. So several airlines have basically embargoed animals in cabin coming from high-risk countries. So first, yes, check with CDC. You can check with the preferred port of arrival and the animal care facility there to see their specific requirements, and check with the airline. As to the process, one of the things we discovered is that there's a lot more animals in cabin than anybody anticipated, so it's a very good thing that CDC was diligent in including the passenger environment into this regulations, because now we're really seeing how many dogs are traveling, and that's a really vital piece of information for the transmission of diseases and understanding exposures and vectors and all sorts of things that you know about.
Yeah. You know what I wanted to add to before we get too far? People might say, why is it a high risk country, or why is it low risk or no risk? Just again, this is just spouting out my memory from my CDC days. But a high risk country, that means they have canine variant rabies, which we have eradicated in the U.S. They have in that country, they have canine variant rabies, and they have rabies in other animal species, such as, I don't know, raccoons or whatever. So they have it in the wildlife population and also in the canine species. So that's why that's high risk. If it's a low risk country, they have it in more just the wildlife population. Other animals, canine variant is gone. And then no risk, they don't have, I don't think they have it at all, rabies and everything. So totally eradicated of rabies in general, dogs or wildlife species. We as a country, the U.S., we are low risk because you guys know we don't have canine variant, but we do have raccoon rabies or whatever. we have it that way, or even bats.
Bats, yeah,
So,
yeah, exactly. There is, as you could imagine, with a big demand out there for people traveling in cabin with their pets or bringing them as excess baggage, and a small supply, only 6 ports with 7 ACFs, the demand has overwhelmed the supply. So there are a number of companies that are looking at forming ACFs at other ports, as well as we've been actively involved in trying to streamline our procedures to be able to open up more spaces for people coming in. But it is a long process. And so I think the biggest tip I could give anybody is don't assume that you're just going to be able to book a flight in a month from now, even if you've done your paperwork, and be able to gain entry with your pet into the United States. You have to follow this process. We're telling people 45 days before the flight to initiate their inquiry with us, and even then, it still takes us, almost 2 weeks, 3 weeks before we get to that person to be able to process their application fully. So you still have to have all the work done, the titer tests, the rabies vaccinations, the exams. But you can't make your final reservation with an airline until you have the reservation and the confirmed acceptance from CDC. So when we receive the reservation, we have to enter all of that information into something called SafeTrack, which is CDC's program to track the dogs that are coming into the United States. And we include a bunch of information, and it gets approved, and there's a specific reservation email that's issued through that system. And until that reservation is issued, technically the passenger is not authorized to travel with a pet.
Okay. That's a lot.
So it's a lot, and it really can impact in today's world where everybody assumes you can just pick up a phone and book a ticket or go online and book a ticket. It's not. That's not available if you're traveling with a dog.
You know what? It will be wonderful, and this is just wishful thinking for the future, but it would be wonderful if now that system can connect with the airlines to confirm that that animal.
Exactly.
It would be nice to have some technology to do that.
Yeah.
Because
we're working. We work and send every day. We work with CDC and Customs, and we send a list over to the various terminals to say, okay, we're expecting these dogs with these passengers today. But it's not automatic. We need to get there. Yeah,
it would be nice.
Which port has 2?
Pardon me?
Which port has 2?
LAX, Los Angeles.
Okay.
But they're not as we said before, they're not on airport grounds. So
they're not directly on. They can't. So the big difference, the big advantage that by being on airport and being part of the Port Authority, effectively employment base, is that all of our employees are security badged, and we have access to all of those secure areas. So another facility that doesn't have that privilege permit with their port, they have to wait outside the secure area or be escorted into it by somebody. So it's a lot. It adds a layer of complexity that we don't have. Of course, we pay for that privilege because we have to pay additional rent and fees to the Port Authority for the privilege of having the permits.
Yeah, but also say for the facilities are off, they have to make sure their facility is bonded, correct?
Correct.
You're automatically bonded since you're
No, we're not automatically. We have to we have to apply. It's not automatic.
Oh wow.
But we all have to be bonded that's through Customs.
Okay.
And but none of the facility, well, I should say at LA and Dulles Airport, those are the 2 other major ACFs. Their facilities are relatively close to the airport, but they are not on premises.
Okay. That is a whole lot, but again, we definitely recommend that people
I keep wanting to create sound bites that can somehow convey this information, but I haven't been able to figure it out.
It's complicated. It's
Yeah.
complicated.
Well, I wanted to say, definitely make sure you check out CDC's site. Definitely make sure you check out ARK's site for information. Also, as you said, make sure, let's see, there was another site you said to go to.
The airlines.
The airline. So all of these places will definitely give you everything you need to know to prepare and what to do and all that good stuff. But before we get out of here, I definitely wanted to bring up, is the ARK hiring? What kind of credentials are needed?
Yeah, yes, we always are hiring. So I say that we're blessed in many ways because people that love animals and like to work with animals are a unique group of people, and they're very loyal and dedicated, and so they fall into the category of people are doing what they love, and as opposed to people that are just grinding numbers or doing something they don't particularly like, but that they're good at. So yes, we need people, but as we're growing and there's turnover, so we're always looking for good people. The credentials necessary, one, we do need people that drive, because you have to drive and pick up dogs and cats from cargo facilities and from the passenger facilities. You need to be able to pass through the security requirements that are imposed by the port and by CBP. So you have to be free from arrests and free from drugs. Mostly is the big the big thing, and even an arrest does not necessarily violate it, but we would have to do further investigation. We look for people with background in either like a vet assistant, a vet tech, or running a kennel, working in a grooming facility. But you need to be comfortable with dogs, cats, other small animals, and have the ability to manage an aggressive dog or a fractious dog that's maybe a little bit excitable. So it's we interview and look for those qualities and characteristics, and then we also provide a lot of training for everybody working in our facility, because it's not just a kennel. So we have to adhere to the IATA live animal regulations. We have to adhere to the CDC requirements, the USDA requirements, FAA requirements. So it's quite extensive, and it takes us approximately 6 months for every employee to get them fully up to speed.
Would someone who is not a veterinarian assistant, but absolutely loves animals, not that I'm leaving you, Dr. Bryant, but would you take someone without that background and train them because they have a passion for animals?
We do have some internship programs that we work with New York City students, and you'll see some of that there. We really do want someone that's got the background of particularly working with animals that are anxious and stressed. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a veterinary background. It could be if you've worked in a shelter or with a rescue group, that you can demonstrate you have that experience to manage dogs. Because the last thing you need is, as everybody knows, dogs can smell fear, and you don't want to have someone that's nervous, even if they are very passionate and loving about animals.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And do your employees have to live in the New York area?
Yes, because sometimes we may get a emergency shipment, or we need someone at a moment's notice, and so it's very helpful to have someone that's within a 30-minute radius of the airport. That doesn't necessarily kick you out if you're really, really determined, but it certainly helps to be local.
Okay. So George is out. So
Yeah,
I
George.
can't.
Well,
Look, the goal.
if you have a private jet.
We're going to speak it into existence. She's going to be coming down this way in the future, so there might be opportunities. There might be opportunities.
Yeah, I know we're kind of ending the show, but the one thing that you said at the beginning, and I feel extremely passionate about, is that this is critical. Having animal facilities at particularly major ports of entry, and also the collaboration and cooperation of all the different entities involved in moving pets is really critical. I've spoken at a number of industry conferences around the world on this topic, and there are facilities, some of them, most of them are government run, at other, in other, like Europe, UK, Australia, South Africa, but in the United States, it's pretty much non-existent. And so even here at JFK, where we are present, we'll find situations where the airline leaves an animal in their cargo facility for a day, and that's unacceptable, really. And it's not good for the animal. It creates all sorts of issues with customers. So the best thing to do is to have a coordination with an animal facility that can really provide the care that's necessary. Make sure that the animal gets relieved. Make sure the animal is fed and watered. And cleaned up. I mean, the last thing you want to do is deliver a dog to a customer that's been sitting in a cage and has, maybe cut themselves or, had an emergency or something. So this way we can evaluate the dog immediately when they get off the plane and take care of it, get it calm, so that by the time the passenger, the owner or whoever's picking up the dog gets it, it's happy. And
well, just as you mentioned, in other countries, it seems like it's a part of their government type,
right,
behind it. In the U.S., if we can get the federal government to be behind such facilities, that's going to care for more than just, they have things for quarantining for birds, they have quarantining for horses, but there's nothing established for your pets coming through, or something like that. But if we can, either way, if we can get the federal government more involved, and it's going to be a collaboration, because pets, or say dogs and cats coming to the country, that's USDA, depending on if it's for commercial sale or adoption, adoptable dogs or cats, and then there's CDC for the personal pets, and it can expand from there. But in a collaboration, a federal government collaboration, we need to have these facilities on airport grounds. If you have the support of that, imagine how much bigger you could be.
Right, right. Yeah, if there could be consolidated, one agency in charge of it, it would make things so much easier.
Yeah,
absolutely. Well, to that point, you had a question here. How are air carriers collaborating with the ARK? Is that like a really good relationship, and is that helping?
Yeah, a number of, there are a number of air carriers that move a lot of animals. And so the ones that are truly committed to animal welfare have sought us out and worked with us to provide certain services for them. And with each airline, it's different. In some cases, like I said earlier, we'll go directly to the plane to retrieve cargo dogs and cargo animals. Other cases, it's a more limited environment that, or a limited portfolio of services that we provide. But a lot of my time is spent going to various cargo meetings and other meetings within the port and telling them about what we do, and educating the different people involved into what are the risks of not doing this, and why they should be working with us. So we've achieved a really strong penetration here at JFK now, but we're now 8 years into our facility being open, and it's really taken a long time. And as Nelva can probably attest, when you were working with airlines, you get people that get moved around every year or every 2 years. You have a variety of reporting arrangements. So in any given day, I could work with someone here or someone at headquarters. So it's a process. It's a process. It's not a given, and there's no one to say this has to happen within the United States. There's no government agency saying there must be a care for the animals.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I can't believe how fast our time went by, and I actually had more questions, but I don't want to keep you here forever. But if people want to learn more about the ARK and all that you do, please go to arkjfk.com. Where you can, definitely get more tips and lots of resources to help you in preparation or just learn about the ARK. If you're looking for a job, they're always looking, as Ms. Beth has said, and I'm sure it's a fun place to work, especially when you love animals. Beth, is there anything else that you would like to share with everyone?
Well, we do have our at ARK JFK Facebook and Instagram. That our Instagram has a lot of cute little videos of day-to-day occurrences at the ARK. Everything from customer reunions to how does a horse get shipped to what does it feel like for a vet exam. So a lot of information there, and fun and cute and short. Shorter than me.
Dr. Bryant, is there anything else you want to say?
No, I just want to thank Beth for being here again, and I'm hoping we'll continue our relationship and have you back again, I'm sure, next year.
All right.
I'm so glad. Thank you for, like I said,
Thank
I think we handled some complicated topics and explained it. So I think this was an outstanding session. So thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Everyone, you have a great weekend, and thank you for joining us for another Facebook Live, and we will see you next Friday at 1:00 Eastern Time. Everyone, for now, have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, I've pushed in.